if there is one thing that artificial intelligence nowadays does not have, that's transparency. And there's been a team of researchers from MIT, Stanford, and Princeton, so, not the last idiots, who rated the transparency of 10 AI companies. Each one received a failing grade. They all failed. And of course, we have Microsoft, we have definitely OpenAI, we have Meta. In fact, Meta, I think they got like the highest score, which was 54 out of, I don't know what, probably 100. So quite poor, and that was the highest one, the highest score ever recorded in that survey. So this means that, in fact, we are lacking transparency. And what I'm going to do in this episode is summarizing a bit the words of my personal guru and hopefully yours, Gary Marcus, the link of whom I will definitely report in the show notes of this episode at datascienceatom.com, the usual official website, but also on the now official YouTube channel at datascienceatom on youtube.com, of course. Now, I want to be very clear that it's not just a matter of OpenAI, because, everyone would think like, okay, he's going to talk about against OpenAI one more time. I have nothing against OpenAI. In fact, it's a bunch of companies out there and, the usual suspects, frankly, who are not being transparent, especially with AI. We have seen this happening already with IT, with social media, with, Facebook back in the days. And now this is a deja vu. It's happening again with AI. So, this episode will be about the lack of transparency. Hey everyone, welcome back to Data Science at Home podcast, your go-to podcast for all things AI, machine learning, and tech entrepreneurship. I'm your host, as always, Francesco, and today we are taking a break from algorithms and code to talk about something that is just as crucial for people out there. This is very important because lack of transparency in AI, especially with the tools that we use every day, it's something that is missing, and it's something important. We've been covering a number of times ethical issues, for example, but transparency is even, more demanded. And as Gary Marcus actually said, as users, as consumers, we should be demanding transparency. And so I hope I will do a decent job summarizing a bit the type of transparency that we actually need to demand whenever we use this software or these products that are definitely equipped with AI or whatever you want to call it. Definitely not AGI. Well, what is transparency? Transparency means being clear about what you've done and what the impact is. If you want to have a very simple definition of transparency without too much philosophy, that's what it is, right? And it can sound really trivial, really obvious, but it's extremely important. It matters a lot. And so it happens that companies like Microsoft and several others, Meta, OpenAI, in the top rank, they actually have a difficulty. They might be delivering amazing products, but when it comes to transparency, their products are, a bit suffering, to say the least. Now, there has been some initiatives, of course, around, starting from Microsoft's president, Brad Smith, in May 2023, who announced or proposed this 5-point plan for governing AI. And this plan was indeed meant to promote transparency. But as a matter of fact, that never happened, at least not that we know of. Now, at OpenAI, there is a very similar situation. Of course, now, Mira Murati, former CTO, she just left very recently. I am not that much informed in, too much gossip about the reasons why she left. But when she was OpenAI CTO, very, very recently, there was an interview for the Wall Street Journal, and she couldn't answer, or she didn't want to answer, I don't know, we should ask her, very basic questions about, hey, what data have you used for, training OpenAI product Sora, for example. and she didn't know. She had no idea, or she couldn't reveal. Who knows? We will never know. So maybe former CTO Mira Murati, before leaving or after leaving now, if she can talk, she should tell us. Well, this is unacceptable, of course, for a CTO. A CTO should know. This is the bare minimum that one, should pretend from a CTO. And so the doubts are a bit too many here. Everybody's raising an eyebrow when the CTO of OpenAI is telling you, I honestly have no idea what data you guys have been used for training something that you guys use. What we know, however, is that there are many artists out there that got so pissed off because their drawings and paintings were kind of similar to what Sora was generating, or many other LLM-based or GPT model-based models were vomiting at the user's prompt. So there is some kind of transparency, and I will show you how many types of transparency we actually should be demanding, to these companies. That's exactly what Gary Marcus is saying. It's like, okay, it's not one simple definition of transparency. There are, when it comes to AI and these types of models, there are several flavors of transparency, right? For example, there is data transparency. Now, what's data transparency? At the bare minimum, we should have, a manifest of the data that all these systems are trained on. Okay, it's extremely important because there might be data that you are not allowed or not supposed to use for training these models, and you will never know, except when it's too late. For example, when you probably find a snippet of your code, which is extremely difficult, but it's definitely possible, or a paragraph of your text of your book, or some lines of your drawings, or your paintings, or your music. These things are generating pretty much everything. And so all of a sudden you find in the generated data something that resembles, hey, I've seen this, yeah, actually that's mine. So, and that's too late, because 1 million users or more are already using that, and you're not getting paid. But it's not only a matter of money, it's just that maybe you just didn't want to, for that piece of data to be used for that model to be trained. So, it's a legitimate right that you are not, you're not respecting, and as a company, as a provider. And so that's the biggest problem. Now, there are a few folks out there who are actually saying something extremely smart, which is we need nutrition labels for data. And I find that analogy absolutely, genius. Because would you buy something that you don't know, you just want to try it out, and if the label, you turn the can and behind the can, there is like a blank label, would you actually eat it? You might have whatever cultural issues, you don't eat meat, or you don't eat vegetables, or you don't eat conservatives, whatever. You should know what's in that can, right? And that's exactly what what happens by law. So why not, having the same concept for data? I don't understand why. We should, right? So that's another type of transparency is about algorithmic transparency, and that's something even more subtle, because if you have a driverless car, or a fintech application, or something even more critical like an industrial plant or a power plant, or in military and defense, you have rockets, or in space engineering, you have, again, rockets, just a different type. Now, when something goes wrong, because your loan application is rejected, or because the driverless car crashes into a wall or into a pedestrian, even worse, you would like to know what was in that car, what was in that rocket, and what was in that fintech application. You want to know the reasons why, the failure. And you need that for many reasons, as a debugging tool for sure, because things can happen when the software is out of the supply of the provider. It's already in the field. You need it for legal responsibilities. You need for post-mortem analysis. I mean, there are many, many reasons why you need to know what's happening inside algorithms. You cannot treat everything as a black box. And even more so when that model that you're considering a black box has been trained on public data. So you see where the misalignment is. Public data, so we have to be open to give the data to these models that then all of a sudden will become closed and they become black boxes. It's unacceptable. And I believe that I'm not the only one who thinks about this. So the third type of transparency is about source transparency. Now, there has been, this is something that is more and more prominent because models become more and more effective and more powerful. It's becoming more and more difficult to distinguish between an artificial intelligence from a human, for example. And I'm not talking about Turing test. That's nonsense that we were talking about in the 80s and the 90s. And then in the 2000s as well, but then we stopped bothering about that. But as a matter of fact, it is more and more the case that people can get scammed by AIs, even by voice. Voice, tone, text, 100%. I mean, it's so simple to even mimic the style, that someone write, and if you receive an SMS or a text or whatever, you could believe that's actually your son or your daughter or your relative, because the only elements you have to analyze authenticity is their text. And so it's becoming easier for AIs to trick humans, and which was intended, of course, because it means that technology works. So that's a good thing. The thing is that people should know if they are communicating with a real person or a machine. And at least as far as I know, there are a few, attempts to detect. But as I will say in another episode, there is an episode, by the way, coming on that will tackle exactly that topic, like how to distinguish. But I don't want to anticipate anything. But from a legal perspective, I must know if I'm speaking with an AI or not, which means that this is a regulatory problem, right? Only a regulation, a law, can enforce providers and product companies to build an AI that must be announced before usage. There's no technology. At some point, the two things, like the text generated by a human and the text generated by an AI, will be part of the same statistical distribution, and it will be impossible to distinguish one from the other. That's a mathematical and statistical fact, okay? It will happen. Does it mean that we are reaching AGI? No. It means that we are sampling from the same population, statistically. And so you cannot distinguish if the ball is red or blue, because red balls and blue balls are in exactly the same amount, exactly in the same pool, or in the same bag, if you have a bag, a statistical bag. Now, back to the fourth type of transparency this is a very nice one, environmental and labor transparency. I mean, this is something that nobody's talking about. Can you tell me, or should I know as a user, how much megawatt did you use and consume, maybe in my city, or maybe in a place that I'm protecting, in order for me to have this beautiful prompt and this beautiful generation? I need to know what is the environmental impact of what I do. And these models are beasts when it comes to the electricity and the environmental impact they have. Like, the energy footprint is incredible. So my question is, if I have a car, at least it works like this in Brussels and in many other European cities and capitals especially. If you have a car, and that's an old car, that consumes, pollutes. It has an old engine. The local government usually prevents you from entering the city. And the reason for that is that, of course, environmental impact of the car. And if we allow many cars of that type, is going to be a problem because, you enter a residential area and there is a diesel, there is a pollution, there is smog, there is, toxicity. And so they prevent you from entering the city because your car has a huge environmental impact. Shall we apply the same to large language models? I think so. And labor transparency is another thing. Did you use humans to do what you call reinforcement learning with human feedback? How many humans did you use? How many human hours or man hours did you use to achieve those results? Because if you're using batteries of people like you do with chickens to produce a model, I might have the choice of not, using your model because it has a very bad impact on society, on the environment and on society or both. So I need to know these things. They should be written somewhere. Again, we should have, nutrition labels also for models, not just for data. This is something I'm adding now, which would make a lot of sense. You need to have and to read the pedigree of your model, of the model that you're using, and you might still decide not to use because, oh no, this is too bad for me. This is too bad for the environment. I'm not going to use this, right? So consumers don't have that option today. And finally, we have corporate transparency. This is something that has been explained with, something that comes from the Ford Pinto story. Ford Pinto was an old car from the 70s, if I'm not wrong. And so apparently Ford knew that their cars, the rear gas tank, at some point it could explode. Yes. So, you were driving on the highway or whatever, and that could happen. And at Ford, they knew this. So the manufacturer, they knew that. But, of course, they didn't, reveal that in public. Now, this is extremely unethical to start with, but it should be illegal. I think it is for, many products out there. It's not for AI. So there is no corporate transparency that I know of. If there is some law in some country that has been, created or proposed before this episode, I'm very sorry. I'm not sure. We would have heard. But this is not happening. So there is no transparency, no corporate transparency on large language models and AI, which means that your model can, quote unquote, explode, which means that your model can be unsafe, can be broken, can have backdoors, and you would never know. And this is extremely bad. So, as you can see, there are 5 different types of transparency, and none of them is being offered to the end user. And this is a shame. I hope you enjoy the show, and I hope you share with me this shame. We need more transparency. See you soon.